I even like almost changed my last name to sound more like De Niro and Pacino at one point when I was like 19.
What was your version of that?
It was Cordero.
Adam Cordero?
Adam Cordero. I remember writing out Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Adam Cordero. Like in the life. That's right. Thank you.
Adam Scott, it's great to meet you.
You too, Zane. I'm a big fan, as I said.
Thanks.
Great interviewer. You know, a great interviewer when Howard Stern has this too, where they're asking the questions that is on the tip of your tongue rather than some stuff that doesn't matter. I feel like you ask those questions because you know music and you have this curiosity about it. It's great. Anyway, you do a great job.
I really appreciate that, man. Those words mean a lot. And I'm really stoked to have a chance to. What you popping over there?
Just a LaCroix. What if it was a Budweiser?
Would it be so good if you'd given me that compliment and then just cracked your 8th bud for the morning? Just be like, but then I'm hammered. So everyone's great at what they do right now because I'm just a good drunk.
That's right.
That's what
I just throw out compliments.
I know that you're a music fan. I know from your podcast, I know from the kind of bands that you're into and the artists that you talk specifically there, but also how important music is to you. And it's a good place to start for us to get to know each other, man. It's just like one of those key moments as a young person when your identity is forming and you're thinking like, who's that band? Like, who's the one that speaks to me? And I'm going to meet friends through this band.
Yes. Yeah. For me, that is... that's kind of all of it. Is you're at that age where you are finding your people, your musicians, bands, your actors, your movies, and you're kind of wrapping your identity around all of that, wrapping those around your identity. And for me, certainly it was REM and U2. And those are the ones that Scott Aukerman and I made the podcast about. And I think that was part of the, really what ended up being the heart of those podcasts and the real fun of it was kind of going album by album into those discographies and remembering where we were and what we were doing back then and how much that music really, really means to us. But REM for me was always that band. It's kind of like your first love. Like there's something just forever special about that music and kind of what it did to you back then.
I love them so much.
Yeah.
They're the Outsiders win. I mean, they were not supposed to win.
I know.
They were a strange band. You know this.
I know.
And by the time they finally... Weirdos, right? And they never stopped. I mean, the band got great at writing pop songs.
Yeah.
Michael got great at subverting pop music.
Yeah.
He was like, I know what to give you to make you like this as a large group of people, but I'm still going to paint weird abstract pictures around it.
It's true. You look at the kind of monster period now when they're the biggest band in the world and what they were putting out there and their show was
so
weird.
It was weird, but it was just so... dark. Like I remember seeing them live on that tour.
Yeah.
Dark. It's fucking claustrophobic and paranoid and it's coming for you.
That whole album is
great.
It's great and it's really, really audacious.
That's a great
to be the biggest band in the world and you're like, I think we're going to put after two beautiful, worldwide smashes.
A lot of loot, a lot of light, a lot of beautiful, deep music, but a lot of really soothing stuff. And then they hit you with this.
With this thing, with all the tremolo guitar and...
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a big band for me as well. And I think all of the artists that you and your friend talk about seem to have that in common. They start from a strange place and then somehow people discover them and something happens. Talking Heads, I know, pivoting into Springsteen, same thing. He was definitely not supposed to be the guy he is today at the beginning. I mean, he was on a different road. There's something about that when you're a kid, I think, and you're not quite sure who you are, but you see these other people find their big audience through, but not like changing who they are.
I almost feel like Springsteen, it was like through force of sheer will, he was going to make this the most popular music in the world. If it killed him, he was going to fill up those arenas and stadiums with this. And he never changed what he was doing, but just through his sheer charisma and songwriting
and work ethic, dude.
And work ethic. Like,
crazy.
Yes, that guy didn't stop.
I mean, have you ever met Jimmy Iovine, who produced some of those really key records and engineered them?
Briefly, a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah,
and produced Rattle and Hum, too.
Yeah. I mean, he's been across, some of these records that we truly love and others. And he talks about Springsteen and John Landau as just being like, if you didn't understand what was required and accept it, then there was no place for you in the room. But what was understood and required was just like crazy.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything you had.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to the big U2 question I've wanted to ask you. Pop. How do we feel about Pop?
Oh, Pitchfork just took another look at Pop.
They did. They did
over the
re-review.
Yeah.
What do they say?
They gave it like an 8.7.
So it's aged.
Yeah. Well, for them, 8 points out of 10. So they're like, this is great. And they haven't been particularly kind to them in recent years.
I mean, not Jet unkind, but also, do you remember Jet?
Of course, I remember Jet.
Yeah, they got it bad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that goes down in history as one of the worst, like the roughest reviews of all time.
Well, they also arrived right at the tail end of that whole thing that was happening, so they got kind of piled on, I think,
big
critically.
time. I know the guy who did that review, and
Really?
I'm like, I like you, but you're a bad man. He's like, it was a bad day.
They've been mean a few times, but it's still the first place I go for reviews.
It's a great critical space. So they've come back to Pop. They've recognized that album. Cause the reason I raise this for people listening right now as a huge U2 fan as well, is that was an album that was considered a miss at the time. A lot of people felt like they'd taken the whole concept thing way too far.
Yeah.
And the tour was rough. It was plagued with technical difficulties. There was some sales issues, stuff U2 had never dealt with before.
Yeah.
Overly ambitious, I think.
I remember going to see the Pop Mart show and paying all the money I had at the time for third row center tickets. I couldn't believe I was actually going to get to see them this close. And look in San Diego, looking behind me and seeing that most of the top section of the stadium was empty.
Crazy.
Like they just weren't filling. And I guess the album may have been part of that. There just wasn't like a big hit single or whatever. I think the album is obviously has great moments. I think it still feels, to me, unfinished. I still feel like the high points for me are like Gone and Do You Feel Loved and what's the one Please. But then there are some spots where it feels like maybe this would have been a B-side. I mean, to me, it just feels a little underconceived.
I think when you get to the top of that, when you get to that altitude, it's pretty hard not to lose your head a little bit. And I think if you're lucky, you come down a few thousand feet and you get to take a look around and go, okay, we can climb again, but we just need to get our head back.
Yeah.
I think they were lightheaded. I think they'd been working so hard at that point that it's hard to know, and also what U2 are we? Are we the authentic, genuine, heartfelt tellers of life stories? Or are we the subversive, weird pop culture juggernaut?
Right. But I feel that part of what makes them great is their big swings that they take. And often those big swings miss. Or every like 5 albums, the big swing misses. And then they kind of rebuild from there.
Yeah.
I love Rattle and Hum, but it was kind of seen as a cultural miss. And from that miss, we get the restart with Achtung Baby. I love Pop in a lot of ways, but from that we get all that You Can't Leave Behind. So I think there are these, for the bird's eye of it is that you see that they kind of take these wild swings, and that's where they're able to gain perspective on what really works for them.
Completely agree. They're also pop culture junkies.
Yeah.
A lot of artists like to tuck themselves away. I feel like the reason U2 are constantly moving in their own rhythm and real time figuring it out is because they're unafraid to look around and go, oh, so it's Oasis?
Right.
Like I was in the room when they came out and said we were reapplying to be the biggest band in the world.
You were.
What a ballsy fucking thing to say in London. I mean, at the Astoria, ballsy as shit.
That was for All That You Can't Win.
Yeah, it was the one after Pop when they came back, and it was like, it was a beautiful daytime.
Yeah.
We were reapplying.
And look at what they did. That show
Yeah.
is maybe the best live show I've seen. That or the first Zoo TV. I saw Zoo TV right when it started in March of '92.
Wow. Like the beginning.
Yeah, at LA, at the Great Western Forum at the time. And yeah, it was the very beginning of that tour, and everyone just like, holy, what is this? We hadn't seen any of this before, and there was no,
It's starting with Zoo
obviously,
Station.
Zoo Station.
Bam!
Yeah.
Just crazy.
And no social media, obviously, or anything. So we hadn't seen any of this before.
Yeah.
It was terrific.
I remember that time before social media, not to age myself, because I'm all about the tools. Use the tools, make the tools work for you, But I remember just before social media happened, going and seeing the Hives at the garage in London, and about 800 people. And I've told the story. Yeah, man, it was like unbelievable. I remember going into the men's bathroom, not to be too graphic, but everyone was dying to use the bathroom because no one would leave the show.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those rare moments where, not to be too gender specific, but there's a queue to the men's bathroom, whereas normally in venues like that, it's the other way around. And it was a queue to get in, and everyone went in, and all anyone was doing was talking on their phone while they were in the urinals, just telling everyone what they just witnessed. Those moments are so...
That's amazing. That's like the story about the first test screening of Jaws, that one of the producers knew they had a hit because after the first victim gets eaten by Jaws, someone in the front row ran out because they had to throw up because they were so shocked. Yeah. But then he knew they had a hit because that person ran right back in and took their seat. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my poor kid. He was only about maybe 13, 12 at the time when we took to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. In that moment when the head gets smashed into the phone, that's when he got up and was like, I'm done.
That's enough.
And he walked out. I'm through with that film.
Forget it.
You're not too... This is happening to you and to your friends right now a little bit. The second season, for the delays and for whatever reason, it's worked. I mean, anticipation, who'd have thunk? It actually still works. You're really having an incredible time with this show, and rightfully so. It is just fantastic television.
Oh, thank you.
Really fantastic television.
Thanks.
You play such an essential part of it, but a lot of these artists we just talked about, they have a small group of people they share this with in a big crew. Whereas, there's a large group of people that work on shows like this. And when it starts to become successful, what's the feeling like to be a part of a huge ensemble of people trying to make it work?
It's a great feeling. And you're right. It is a feeling that we all get to share. Because, we worked on it for a long time, and you never know how something will be received, if it will be received. I mean, when we made the first season, we made it in a bubble because of COVID and everything, but also because now with TV, you shoot the entire thing and then you put it together and put it out there. You don't know how it's going to be received, like in the old days of TV where you would make something and 3 weeks later it was on TV while you're making the next
Or
episode.
the numbers of your Nielsen's low, so you better pivot.
Exactly. You're always reacting to something. So we didn't know when we put the first season out if it was going to be received well at all, or if it would be embarrassing, if people would make fun of it. We just didn't know. We just knew it was weird and we loved it. And this time, like you said, there was a 3 years between seasons. So the longer it took, the more pressure there was on us that it meet expectations. And those expectations tended to grow, at least in our heads, as time went on. So
yeah, of course,
we really didn't know how it was going to land. And so it's been all the more gratifying and all the more of a relief that people are reacting well to it.
The situation of being an actor, of seeing yourself go out, especially in that first season, when you see the character evolved into a narrative and it's there and it's on screen and you're watching it with everybody else.
Yeah.
How long before you start to realize everything's going to be okay? Because I can imagine that fear of did I embarrass myself by taking part in this, or am I the weakest link in this?
Right.
It's probably quite hard to shake for a minute.
Yeah, always. On the drive here, I was worrying about that. I mean, the first time it really hit me was right before, a couple months before season 1 came out. The billboards started popping up around Los Angeles, and the billboards for season 1 was my head with like the desk coming out the top. It was my face, and you would think it's an amazing moment, something I've been waiting for my whole career for a moment like this. But for me, it was pure anxiety, this could potentially be the most embarrassing thing. Are people going to make fun of this? So the concerns I was just talking about. And I remember calling Ben and going through this with him, and he's like, look, I've had my head up on a lot of these billboards just like you do right now, and just kind of talking about how this is beyond your control. Like that is beyond that thing being up there, it's beyond your control. How it's received is not something we can have a hand in. We're done with our work, and now it's our job just to push it out there. And how people receive it is up to them. But we feel good about what we've done here. And we did. We loved it.
Because it must be really hard to get your head around what the concept of disappointment is.
Yeah.
When you put so much energy and love into something that has actually even yet to show itself or find out its true value, which is to people, not true value beyond what you get. You get the process. Beautiful. You'll always have that. But it's got to survive, right? It's got to get through.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a part of a lot of stuff that was appreciated 10 years later or a few years later. So I thought at best we would be appreciated down the road, which would have been good enough for me.
No, it's a beautiful, it's a brilliant concept. What did it look like on paper to you? I know that you loved it immediately, but it's one of those amazing television concepts that if you present it to most people who aren't in the business of picking winners or picking things that move them, they might go, this seems a lot to me on paper.
My first instinct was, I don't think I'll ever actually get to do this. This is too good. But then, like you said, on paper, you're kind of getting emotionally what's going on. You're getting story, but it wasn't until I actually arrived on the set in like the fall of 2020 and saw what our production designer, Jeremy Hindle, had built. He and Ben had kind of come up with this whole world. It wasn't until then that I got the sense of what we were really doing and the world that was building up around us. And once you're there, once you're on that set, it does like 70% of the work for you.
The claustrophobia is real. The sense of disorientation is real. You lose the sense of going to work that day. It's like, no, I'm in this.
Yeah, to get to the office where we work with the green carpet and the low ceilings with fluorescent lights, to get there, you do have to walk through just, white hallways, like a maze of white hallways. So just getting there is sort of an entrance into a world that's hard to not kind of feel like you're actually there.
Not every actor should have an experience that they're acting upon, because obviously that wouldn't be acting. That would probably be more of documentary work.
Right.
But that being said, it doesn't strike me that you've come anywhere near this kind of corporate experience as extreme as it is presented in that environment on Severance. You really have no knowledge of it, and yet you do a great job of being there.
I feel like I've worked enough. I've pretended to work enough on camera that I have a sense of what it might be like in an office, having never actually worked in one. I've now been like at a few different workplaces. Like for Party Down, I was a bartender, and to get ready for that job, I just watched tons of Cheers and picked up on Ted Danson's. He's always cutting limes or like drinking seltzer water, so he fills his time or wiping the counter. So I just did all that. I still don't really know how to make drinks.
You can't make a good drink at all?
Not really.
Okay. You're lucky to
It's good for you to know in case we're in that situation.
It's also great that your wife figured that out a long time ago,
she
right?
did.
It's not on the agenda.
That's right.
You talked a little bit about the time it took to get to season 2. Did you watch it with everybody else, the season premiere of season 2? Did you watch it go out at the same time?
We were able to get together and have a celebration that night, because I think it goes out like 9 p.m. on Thursday night. We all got together and had a party.
It feels different. It feels different when you do that, and because so much of the way that the work you do now, right? Let's go back to that before and after again, very briefly. The idea of 7 p.m. on a Friday night or Saturday night, okay,
right? And
now it doesn't happen that way, and so you have to create your own event, and it must be something that you still really sort of drawn towards, this idea of eventizing it, right? Because otherwise, what does it mean after it's done in a strange way?
Something I'm really grateful for is that Apple is putting it out week to week and not dumping the whole season at once.
Yeah.
It kind of creates this anticipation week to week. I know as a fan, I prefer that. I like to have the space to talk about it with other people who watch it.
Same.
And I think for us, for the show, it sort of draws out this cultural moment a little bit and allows people the time to consider what may be happening.
I wonder whether we're actually, and maybe this is a bold statement, perhaps we've turned a corner on the binge era.
Yeah.
And maybe the idea of just dump it all, that made sense for a while. It was a great novelty to be able to just say, oh, I love this. Let me just get through it in a day.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think we're missing something. We're missing a reason to eventize this art.
If it's something I'm rabid for and I've been waiting for, I'll just watch it all in that first weekend.
Yeah.
And then I feel like fried. And by the time you're pushing play for the 8th time, maybe you're not quite appreciating it as much.
Yeah.
But I know for The Diplomat, for instance, I watched all of that right away. And I need to go back and go through it again and really appreciate it.
You know, you're at a point in your life now where I think your story is really inspiring for people because you've taken each opportunity and you've used it as a really important leverage moment to go somewhere new, and it hasn't all just happened in one go and then you're trying to unpack it all and whatever. It's like you've worked really, really hard to get to this point.
Interesting.
That's how I feel, and because I've seen you grow to a point where now you're a leading actor in this, and I know you've done that before, but this is a whole other thing. I feel like Severance is like a real moment.
Yeah.
What were some of those key moments for you where you sort of felt like, okay, this was a really important step for me, even just in terms of confidence, that this decision I made, this sort of courageous decision to bag myself, to be an entrepreneur really, and just put myself out into the industry whether they like me or not, is working?
It's such a good question. I wish I asked myself these kinds of questions. Like, it was a time when I think there was an audition that was coming in, and I was doing Party Down. Now, Party Down was something that I was doing with my friends.
Yeah.
My friends created this show, and we made it in my friend's backyard, and then Stars picked it up and we made it into an actual series. So I was doing that. And after we finished the first season of that, there was some show, and I don't remember what the show was. And they called and said, hey, will you come audition for this pilot for is a big like network thing. And I was like, okay, but I'm doing this thing with my friends that's super fun. No one knows what it is and no one's watching it. But I feel like this is
where I need to be.
This is the thing. But it was a time where, because I had been at it for so long at that point, like 15 years, and really kind of asking for permission to enter the room. That was the first time I said no thanks.
The era of no.
Yeah.
That's
and
big.
Just that one incident really sort of changed my thinking, and also made me realize that the times I had done things for either fun or because I thought it might be interesting, and no other reason other than that. No like career, no idea of career where it might take me. That's when things resonated and actually did make a difference.
I think about this with musicians all the time as well. You know, you back yourself and it's a beautiful time. You start to create your music. You start to figure out who you are and what you want to say. And slowly but surely, life starts to infiltrate.
Yeah.
And you start to look around you and be like, but they're selling out those venues.
Right.
That's one. And then you're like, but they just upgraded their apartment. That's another one. And all these little things start just eating at you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, isn't it? I mean, it is hard not to let those things kind of alter your decision-making process.
It is. And the way REM always, conducted their career was always really inspiring to me and to many people. But the thing that they had that I envy is another 3 people there with you to
steady,
help to keep it. Yeah. And that you all have veto power over each other, just to make sure they stay the course and are doing what they want and not kind of veering in. Sure, you make a mistake every once in a while, but just to kind of keep the sort of mission statement, for lack of a better word, in mind. For me, I've certainly gone off course here and there when I think there's something I should do, and then I end up in something that I wish I wasn't a part of, but that's okay too. The things that really matter to me are also the things that have sort of risen up and are the things that have ended up mattering for the career as well. It's weird.
It's a really lovely comparison because, you talk about the artists that move forward. The band's more of a traditional idea of like, there's 4 of us, we started in a very small venue. If we have to go back there, we'll still make that music.
Yeah.
We'll still keep doing it. It's fine.
That's right.
But you're right.
That's how you end up making Automatic for the People,
great albums.
or Accelerate.
That's right.
when you're that many years in.
Courage of your convictions and the confidence to back it up. Tough when I think you have to go through that whole process of, and you said it beautifully before, asking for permission just to be in the room.
That's right.
Now, I'm not trying to drag you through the worst of it, but I think for a lot of people that see a success like this, it's important that we continue to create a connection between how people see you today versus what the reality of that is like. And I've always felt, at one point, one of my kids went and did a few acting courses like all kids do, and I was praying he got out of that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, just the brutality on your self-esteem, the sense of like self-worth you have to have in order to show up time and time again.
I mean, it's still something that I grapple with and can easily, the kind of self-worth and what you're basing it on, and entirely sort of wrapping your identity and self-worth up in what other people may or may not.
And you're number 12 of 42 that day. And I mean,
and I was, I started professionally when I was 20. So I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know,
But you're old enough at that age also to know what the stakes are. And that's crazy. When you start when you're 15, 16, which has its whole other pitfalls, you're just in la la land.
That's right.
But when you're 20, you're like,
Yeah.
Again, life's is filtering in like, oh, that person's gone to college.
I mean, I was in these waiting rooms, like auditioning for Scream, and I Know What You Did Last, all those movies in the 90s that ended up being a big deal. And these guys I would be in these waiting rooms with all the time, I would see them just like get one of those and then be superstars. And one by one, they were all just going off. And I was like, why am I still in this waiting room?
Yeah.
And that was, 1997 when I was, had to stop and think, why am I still doing this? And basing all of my sort of self-worth on what other people were doing and what other people thought. And it's a bit of a head fake. And
you tell me, but I'd imagine probably figuring out what stories you want to tell, or at least trying to get as close to those stories as possible, is probably the thing that gets you back in the room. Like,
yeah,
people see you as, and even in Severance at times, as having great comedic timing and having the ability to be, and you've been in some brilliant comedies, albeit played kind of darker roles in brilliant comedies. Was that always, did you ever see yourself doing those kind of roles? What kind of roles did you see yourself doing when you were starting?
Yeah, when I was starting, I really just thought I would be a super serious actor. And
no one ever told you were funny?
Well, the funny thing is, as a kid, I was into Saturday Night Live and David Letterman and Albert Brooks. But as far as my acting, that was going to be super serious. I don't know why. It was so weird because I even almost changed my last name to sound more like De Niro and Pacino at one point when I was 19.
What was your version of that?
It was Cordero.
Adam Cordero?
Adam Cordero. I remember writing out Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Adam Cordero. In the library. That's right. Thank you. In the library at my acting academy, I remember writing those down and being like, yeah, this is me. This is it. This is it. Look, this is it.
This is
where I'm going.
This is the missing piece.
Looking back, going and taking classes at the Groundlings or UCB would have done me a lot of good. And it's also, once Step Brothers was sort of my first foray into comedy, and then Parks and Party Down. But Step Brothers was the first. And once I was there for a couple of weeks and watching Adam McKay and Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly and watching
masterclass, just unbelievable.
Yeah, and having no idea what I was doing. I often say it was like learning how to do the high jump at the Olympics.
Adam loves improv. Did he let you improv on your first job?
The entire movie is maybe one or two scripted takes, and then you just screw around all day.
Wow. And you get to do that too. I mean, amazing.
There's nothing precious. Just that was the revolution of it for me, is watching these guys let's just throw it all at the wall and use the good parts, use the funny. But who cares if it's not funny or if it doesn't work?
So what's that like when you're sitting at a table and you've got the cast there and you're playing a particular role? I mean, you're just a King Kong asshole in that film.
Yeah.
And you're funny, and you get to improv, and you get to lean into all this darkness that's probably been building up in your life. It's like, I'm letting it all out right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be moments when you crack when everyone broke cover and you're like, all right, I'm on fire.
It took me a while to sort of figure it out. It wasn't until the end of the film of shooting, it was like 4 months or something. I remember it was like a scene at a dinner table. I remember John C. Reilly and I started kind of just going back and forth and feeling like I was finally letting go a bit and starting to figure out what this was. And I was like, oh, okay, I never want to go back. This is where it's at. Like, this is it. This is so fun.
I feel like your role as Mark S. in Severance is you get to pull a lot of the tools out of the box now that you've been using, sharpening over time. Great comedic moments, great dramatic moments. I mean, you really unveiled elements of those on Big Little Lies. Really important role for the arc of that series. I thought every time you showed up on screen, I thought it was pretty pivotal.
Thanks.
So getting a chance to pull all that together and knowing which bit should be funny and which bit should be dramatic, because Mark is a complex character.
Yeah.
First of all, he's two characters.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how to become one, we get to see all these different sides of him. I think you summed it up recently by saying that the one on the inside is the guy you want to be, and the one on the outside is the guy you just don't want to be anymore.
Yeah, that was kind of where I started when we were just starting to work on the show, and I was at home for the pandemic trying to, get ready to go shoot. And that's sort of where I started. I was like, maybe it's on the inside, Innie Mark is all the things I like about myself. And Outie Mark is all the stuff I hate about myself, and just sort of went from there, just to sort of start to delineate, what one is doing and the other is doing.
But even when you're playing Outie Mark, there's moments when you're at your worst, and by that I mean just clearly hurt, depressed, don't want to be in the room, faced with someone else's domestic situation that just reminds you that you no longer have yours. And there's still comedy. I wonder about the nuance of how to make people smile during painful moments.
I think that a lot of that is just having total faith and trust in Ben Stiller, who's directing, Dan Erickson, who created the show and is writing, and knowing that the tone that we've found with the show allows for all of that, and that Ben as a director is, I don't want to say creating space, but is making sure there is the space for comedic moments and for more kind of dramatic moments, and that the world can withstand both.
I feel like that is very much in Ben's wheelhouse too. There's always a sense with Ben, even at his most comedic, like a Fockers or whatever, I'm still like, this guy's making me really sad at times. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
He walks that line, and Mitty being, to me, which you were in as well, a really good example of Ben Stiller as a director and as an actor, being able to make comedy out of, the melancholy.
Yeah, I think that's part of why we all love him so much as an actor too, is in the midst of these big comedies like Flirting with Disaster or something about Mary, or the Fockers movies, is you see the guy you really identify with, and you just inherently care about him because he is allowing himself to be vulnerable and kind of sharing himself with the camera and with the audience, and we identify with that. I think we all do.
Putting Parks and Rec and some of these other really important TV shows in your journey to one side, I mean, some of these key film roles, you kept finding yourself in this place where you would play this kind of asshole. Mitty, damn, and Mitty was a rough role, as funny as you were. Talk about the end of time, and the end of humanity as we know it through the filter of your character.
That's right.
How do you feel about typecasting at the time when you feel it might be happening? And how do you sort of like come to terms with that and also break free of that and try to, because it's out of your control to some degree, but you know that it's possible?
I think that after Step Brothers, there was certainly a tendency to cast me as sort of the obnoxious, ultra confident dickhead. And I tried not to repeat that too many times, but when Ben Stiller wants me to play the bad guy in his movie, there's absolutely no way I'm going to pass that up, but also figure out a way to make it different and find a different way in. And then like Mike Schur, who created Parks and Rec, asked me to do something similar on The Good Place. There's no way I'm not going to do that either. So for me, it's just whatever's going to be fun with people that I love working with. I think that as long as I was doing other stuff alongside that and not just that, I wasn't too worried about it.
And you also, you're putting a lot of trust into people who repay it in kind. I mean, the decision to do that, you could have said no and been like it's too similar to something I've done before.
Yeah.
But you trusted Ben, and then Ben says, "Hey, let's go to work again, and let's break you out and give you something completely new."
Right. Yeah. I'd never thought of it like that before. I think probably because I never even considered not doing it because I just wanted to work with Ben. But I guess if I didn't do that, Severance probably wouldn't happen. But I'm glad I did.
Ben as a director, obviously there's a friendship there now, and a collaborative relationship with producers, and all these really great things that you get to work on together. But when you're on set, you have to defer to Ben ultimately, and even as a collaborator, ultimately whoever's directing. I know Ben doesn't direct every episode. What's that like? How do you sort of manage that relationship with all the other relationships that are far more kind of gray? And this one probably has to be a little more defined, right?
I think that we share a lot of the same taste, and I think we've both said that a lot of it comes down to taste at the end of the day, and sort of that barometer where you're just something, especially when you're in the midst of a long day, if something just isn't feeling right, whether you can articulate it or not, we can trust each other that we need to maybe take a left turn where we're veering right at the moment. I think that with Ben sort of as a director, I can always trust him. Any of the actors can always have complete trust in him. I think that, sometimes if you're working on something and you're not 100% sure the director is thinking of
Must be tough.
Everything.
It's tough.
Right, because if someone's asking you to behave a certain way and you're like, okay, but we're going 40 miles an hour and someone just jumped on top of the car and this guy just said this, you want me to behave like this? Is that going to be silly, or is that going to...
And also, I'm not invited to the edit. I already know that when I signed up.
Right.
So when I see this, that embarrassment, I'm sure, that fear comes back of like, what are you, with the best of intentions, or sometimes probably even not, what are you setting me up for here?
Right, because I've seen the end result and felt embarrassed for a certain choice because context-wise, it didn't end up making sense, but that's what I'm doing in the thing.
God, hard to be in character when you're doing that too, because you've got to let go. So you can't be thinking about...
Well, that's the thing is with Ben, you can let go because you can know that he's thinking of everything, has thought of everything, thinking of the whole grid. It's all been considered carefully.
There's a lot of really impactful and powerful acting going on across the board through the cast, and some scenes that are... Boy, it's an interesting show, Adam. It's just when you get comfortable and you think, oh, there's some lightness to this.
Right.
You find yourself in a pretty heavy place again, and you're reminded, no, this is a dark show. Have there been scenes that have been really, especially given the environment and how like real it seems, all the corridors and the way, and I mean, even just those overhead lights would be enough to give me anxiety. I feel like I'm in a science room.
And the ceiling is just a little low in our office, not obnoxiously so where anyone's going to scrape the top of their head, but it's just enough that after 15 hours, everybody's just a little...
By design?
Yes. It's meant to feel claustrophobic, but maybe not. Yeah. You can't quite put your finger on it.
Torture for a living at the moment, but I mean, thank God it's successful. Huh? The things we do for ratings.
Right. That's right.
In 20 years' time, you'll be talking to your therapist, like, looking back on it.
I feel claustrophobic just generally in life, and I don't know why.
How about that severance check, though, Adam? It wasn't enough. But have there been scenes in particular when you're with, I mean, there's some really powerful scenes with you and Hallie.
Mm-hmm.
really, really sort of deep scenes with you and Irv, and many others where it was tough. It was tough for you. Like, are there exhausting moments when you're doing something and you're like, man, just getting this on camera is more than a job. Like I'm really have to invest. I guess like an artist, like a songwriter, when they finish writing a song or singing a song, and it's an emotional experience.
Britt Lauer as Helly, John Turturro as Irv, and Zach Cherry as Dylan, and then Tremel Tillman as Mr. Milchick and Patricia Arquette. It's just like this incredible group of people.
It's the greatest cast on Broadway. I mean, it literally looks like it's like a theater production every show.
I think that what we found, and really kind of, I don't know why, but it wasn't until the second season that we were like, you know what? There are no easy scenes in Severance. Like if I'm going and I'm like, oh, okay, today I'm just walking into the office and handing Mr. Milchick a piece of paper and whatever it is, it seems, oh, this is going to be an easy day. Once you're in there and doing it, you realize, no, this is happening, and it's always hard. It's always
because the environment
challenging.
Is hard
Yes, considering everything that's happening, always ends up being a little more challenging than you thought it was going to be.
How do people respond to you if and when you're out and about and people exercise their right to acknowledge your work and see you as part Adam Scott, part Mark S? And it happens all the time. It comes with the territory when you put your stuff in front of people. How have people changed around you after this role?
I don't know if they have. I guess, I did notice right away people, and it was one of the markers of this show sort of landing and working was in spring of 22 when it first came out, people connecting with it and wanting to talk about it, and they having their questions that they want to ask, but they don't actually want to hear answered, which is really
so
fun.
Many.
I know, but you don't want to know because
do people actually come out and ask you? Sorry to sidebar, but do people genuinely? I said to my friends before you came in, I was like, do I even just have the courage to just say, do you know as a cast member what Lumen does?
Yeah.
Like, do you know? Do you have to know, or are you in the dark like everybody else?
Are you asking if I know?
I was asking whether I should ask. Should I ask?
Sure, you could ask.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Wow. Fuck, you're sitting on some gold right there. I tell you what, you thought people didn't change the way that they looked at you before. They will now.
Right.
Every time they see you, they'll be like, Adam, before you go.
Right. I'm not saying I wouldn't fold under questioning if there's any sort of threat to my well-being.
You know what? You're safe. You know why? Because I would be fucking cooked if I got that out of you right now.
I know.
First of all, we'd have all the information. We couldn't sit on it. Second of all,
such a bummer for
everyone. Can you imagine me like, oh yeah, they make toast.
Oh, you want to know?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
You cannot let that go out.
You guys, it's all toast.
It's all toast.
Dan Erickson loves toast. So
whatever it is,
about it.
The work is important.
That's right. It's mysterious and important.
Mysterious and important.
Yeah.
Where does it go from here for you? I mean, this is such an important time in your life well, that's a bold thing to say. It's a great time in your life as an actor, as somebody, as a producer, as a director. I know you want to make films as well. Does it make it easier? Does it make it easier to get things done when you're at the helm of something that people are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that yes and no. It's a tough time in our business right now. Things are, as you know, things are contracting in one way or the other. It's always, I feel like we've been in a period of change now for a while in show business, and we're still kind of trying to find the place to settle.
I didn't think Hollywood would sling their hook, though. I mean, that's the thing that surprised me. When a lot of productions went off. I mean, I knew that there were things changing in terms of the way people were consuming things. But the idea of now Hollywood having to fight just for its right to actually produce and create, from what I've been told, my friends in the business, I didn't see that on the horizon, and it obviously adds a lot of pressure to people's ability just to survive doing what they love, right?
Sure. And we used to, we made Parks and Rec in Los Angeles, and we were really lucky to do so. And I don't know right now if we were to make that show, if we would be able to shoot in Los Angeles. It's kind of a rarity, but I think just selling shows is a challenge right now.
Yeah.
I know that we're kind of in a transitional period right now, but I'm optimistic that we'll find a new place to settle. And I think good material is everything.
Yeah, because then you get a severance, right? Just when you think oh, we're in a loop and it's another it's another A-Team, or it's another Magnum PI, or it's another this, or it's another. And some of these things are great, like Dune, all about it. I haven't seen Romulus. Apparently, that Alien film was your favorite film.
Oh, Romulus was terrific.
Unbelievable.
It's great.
So there's wonderful additive elements to these great legacies. And a lot of times, I don't know how you feel. Sometimes I drive up and down Sunset Strip, I see a new billboard. I'm like, I'm in a fucking loop.
Yeah.
Like I'm literally in a loop at this point. And I feel that way sometimes even with music, and you know how much I love music. But then you get a Severance, or you get something that just jumps out at you that is like, hey, give the people the opportunity to consume something really interesting.
That's right.
And we will respond.
Get a great story. It'll travel 1,000,000 miles for you. It just depends on, no one knows what that's part of the fun of show business too, is that no one knows. There's no set formula that is a guarantee.
You've got to keep moving.
Just kind of waiting for that next great thing to come along.
Yeah.
And maybe it's this, or, okay, well, maybe not, but maybe it's, everyone's looking for it. No one knows exactly what it is or where it's going to come from. And, it's always exciting when it does.
How much fun is it getting to work with your wife and getting to build business with your wife?
It's the best. It really is. We work really well together, and we didn't know if we would. We started like in 2012, 2013, and came up with the idea for this Adult Swim show and just started working together thinking like, let's try this out and just see. She was working on Jimmy Kimmel for a long time in late night, and so we started producing together and really loved it.
I know that you're a proud dad as well, as am I. I got 2 teenage boys. You got, teenagers as well.
How old are they?
18 and 16.
Same.
Yeah.
18 and 16.
Yeah. It's a great time.
Yeah.
They're dying to leave you, and at the same time, they kind of still want to know a few things.
I can't even think about the fact that that's coming.
It's heavy.
It's gonna...
Oh, it's heavy. I mean, can I give you one little observation? So our kid just went to college end of last year, and I thought that he went East Coast, and we're very, very lucky, and all things in the right order. Beautiful, grateful. It was a lot, and it really, really hit me in somewhere deep, like the sense of like, shit, I'm out of a job, and I had to realize like, no, I got promoted. This is maybe quite a severance thing to sort of, but I looked at it as like, being a parent, you'll always have a job. At least I will, whether they want me to work for them or not, I will always work for them.
Right.
But it's like a promotion. That's what helped me through it. It's like I got to let those old parts of that job. I still want that job, but I can't have that job anymore. But I get to do these new things in this new job, and it's a different experience. But it's definitely a lot.
That's a great way of thinking about it, because I already feel as they get older, part of my old job as a dad aren't needed anymore. There are certain ways of protecting them that they don't need anymore. And so it takes a while to adjust to that and sort of be like, oh, you don't need me to do this or that. Okay, that's fine.
The hurt is when you feel like you're out of a job. And then you got to remind yourself, no, it's just a new job.
Yes.
It's a new job.
That's great.
Do you get into music with them? Are they into it?
They're both really into music. My daughter is the one that's a little more open to, like if I have a Billy Joel song, I want her to hear. Whereas my son is like, I have my own thing. Go ahead. That's cute that you like this and this. I'm good over here.
I've had a really wonderful time meeting you, man.
Me too, Zane. Thank you for having me. This is great.
I hope our paths cross again.
Me too.
And any and every opportunity, I will grab it.
Next U2 album. I want to talk to you about it.
Dude, next time U2 come out, let's do this right now. Next time U2, because it ain't going to be REM, sadly. Oh, what the fuck on that? Can we just talk about that for a second?
That they got back together for that
No, that
song?
they fucking broke up in the first place.
I know.
I'm trying to think of the bands now who have yet to reunite, because obviously it's an ever-changing and evolving list. But I feel like maybe 10 years ago, we had about 300 artists that we would have queued up around the block to see.
That's right.
Like from Refused to Soundgarden to Dead to Bled.
Well, Oasis and Rilo Kiley's going to go on the road this summer. I just saw that announced. That's
what I'm saying.
exciting.
There's 2 more off the list. I think the only ones left at this point that I can think of who are sort of fall into that contemporary, haven't sort of aged out or aged themselves out, are like the White Stripes.
Yeah. That would be great.
The Smiths.
That would be amazing.
Fuck.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Can you imagine?
Do you think that would ever happen?
For me, the way I look at it, if they're in dialogue even through lawyers, we're a step closer.
That would be huge.
Fucking believable.
Like Dodger Stadium huge.
Oh my God, dude. Can you imagine?
Unbelievable.
Can you imagine Headmaster's Ritual? Just kick it off. Just meet as murder, go.
Huge. How soon do you think we're getting a new U2 album? Because you just interviewed them for
Yeah.
Atomic Bomb, right?
They're writing.
Yeah.
And when they're writing, who
knows?
fucking knows?
Who knows? They take a really long time.
I think the quality control in that band is really intense.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know those guys. Have you ever met those guys?
Yeah, we had them on the podcast a couple times.
Amazing. That's
amazing.
So you2 with U2?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we did not think that would ever happen. It was
That's
weird.
so good. So each of them are such unique individuals,
Yeah.
and each of them carry a really important card in their pocket.
Yeah.
And I mean, Larry is a powerful one, but the singer, I think, is pretty relentless.
Yep.
I think he's pretty relentless on the old quality control.
So it makes him great.
So it makes him great.
Yeah.
Love you, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Zane.